To play the rest of the tapes that we haven't played. As you can see, I've dropped in with the custom Venom outfit, leather jacket, with the Infinity bandana on. This is the end game. Let's play those tapes.
This is Yellow Cake that Cypher was having the PF's transport. Before we met you, the boss recovered it from a truck crossing the savannah. Are there metallic archaea inside it?
Yes, the archaea metabolize uranium-235 to subsist. They must be stored inside Yellow Cake, or they cannot survive.
So those biological traces we took for impurities were actually the real cargo?
Of course they are deactivated, so they do not trigger a sudden enrichment. They are like baker's yeast. Yet, they do gradually enrich the uranium as they feed. I imagine you detected weapons-grade traces.
Yeah, we did.
And the malachite that was loaded on the truck had traces of uranium in it too. So that's the flower, huh? Skullface was gonna sell do-it-yourself nuke kits. The uranium-enriching archaea complete with a user's manual. And the ores with the uranium could be sourced by the client or provided by Cypher.
Even the trace amounts buried in common ores can be enriched to weapons-grade uranium by the metallic archaea. Proving that must have been the most important factor of the trials. That and the ability to successfully prevent detonation.
So if the amounts of uranium in the ores are low enough, they can get past any inspection. And you only need a tiny amount of the archaea to act as the yeast. No great challenge to smuggle that either. The first step towards saturating the world with nukes.
His plan. That was not my intention. My only goal in developing the metallic archaea was to save the Dene.
What made you think a tool for creating undetectable nuclear weapons would save your people?
After 70 years, the Dene reclaimed the Navajo Nation from which we were banished. We bore all the hardships of poverty. But we were proud to live off the land we called our own. But in the moment the atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima, everything changed.
I don't get it.
The nuclear arms race between the US and the Soviet Union began with the end of the Second World War. Suddenly, there was a massive demand for uranium. And it was our ill fortune that the ground beneath the Navajo Nation was rich with uranium ore. The Black Ana government set up mine after mine, and many of the Dene worked them, never informed of any danger. Every day, they went to work with no protection. The slag was simply piled out in the open. When rain fell, uranium traces left behind would seep out, and when the ground dried, it was blown about as dust. Land and water were contaminated, irradiated. Many of us became sick and died. That pain lives on to this day.
I had no idea.
Wanting more than anything to revive the land my forebears left to me, I was delighted upon discovering microbes that eat uranium. If they could be domesticated, I believed we could rid our land of uranium.
Were you successful?
No. The research called for funding on a colossal scale. But nobody was willing to invest with no prospect of a return.
And that's when Skullface showed up.
Correct. I can save you and your people. We share the same will. That is what he said to me. And I believed him. Black Ana forced me to abandon my uranium cleanup work and focus on nuclear weapons. And he held all the Dine hostage. Today, the uranium mines within the reservation are finally closing down. It is simply less expensive now to source uranium overseas.
New victims, different places.
But uranium is a tactical resource. To rely on a foreign country for it is a difficult decision to make. And he was in the perfect place to influence that decision.
He could have condemned your people to the mines forever.
The contamination comes not only from uranium. The fallout from the Nevada nuclear tests also settled on our lands. As if our fortune were not already bad enough, we are also downwinders. To save the Dine, I must complete my original research.
That explains a lot about why he was doing what he was doing. And that's horrible.
The ethnic cleansing parasites attempt to rob man of his words. Such irony. It was the vocal cord parasites that gave words to him in the first place. Ancient man had no language. Unable to produce complex sounds due to the structure of the throat, he could communicate only through simple vocalizations and gestures. Then the vocal cord parasites infected his larynx. Man's transition to walking upright did not gift him solely with intelligence, but also with his voice. At the time, the vocal cord parasites never harmed man. They merely took a small measure of nourishment. In fact, you could call it a symbiotic relationship. Some animal species use particular vocalization patterns to attract a female and reproduce. Songbirds, certain insects, and also the vocal cord parasites. The difference is that the parasites themselves did not produce sounds. Rather, they had their hosts, man, do it for them. Once secure on the human host vocal cords, a male vocal cord parasite caused the host to produce a certain sound pattern, something like a warble of a bird. Meanwhile, females parasitizing other host pharynxes need only wait. Upon hearing the sound pattern of an attractive mate, they would manipulate their hosts into making contact with the person it came from. The female traveled through his host's saliva to the other host's vocal cords, where the male was waiting, and the pair copulated. We can only imagine how the female manipulated his host, but it was probably through smell. Smells traveled directly to the limbic system via the olfactory cilia in the nasal cavity. Volatile compounds released by the female would stimulate the limbic system, which controls instincts, making the host feel amorous. This kind of sexual selection naturally led to competition between the male parasites. Males that had their hosts produce sounds perceived by females as more attractive succeeded in copulating and producing offspring. Evolutionary traits caused by sexual selection are curious. The peacock's feathers, the mannequin's dance, the firefly's luminescence pattern. Even with courtship behaviors that are not advantageous to survival, those individuals that excel in them produce offspring, and it escalates with each generation. The same was true of the vocal cord parasites. Courtship vocalization rhythms and intonations became more sophisticated, and in order for man to produce such sounds, they had to alter his vocal organs. By lowering the position of the larynx and developing resonating chambers, they enabled more complex pronunciations. But that was not all. The vocal cord parasites activated a transcription factor that would later control man's language ability. A protein that, due to its appearance, is called forkhead box protein P2, or FOXP2. Activating this transcription factor led to the development of brain function capable of creating sophisticated frequency changes. This was the pinnacle of the vocal cord parasite's prosperity. However, this sophisticated pronunciation control was too useful for man to ignore. Once human sexual activity ceased to be only seasonal, and having lost pigment-based sexual characteristics, distinctive vocalizations became the most effective means for humans to attract mates as well. Combined with logic pathways hardwired into the brain, or universal grammar, it was not long before advanced communication was possible. This was the birth of language. Luckily for man, it was around this time that a particular retrovirus was circulating. While not lethal, it infected not only man, but the vocal cord parasites as well. It is presumed that this virus removed part of the parasite's DNA and reverse transcribed it into man's reproductive cells. It was a vector. Among the genes it transcribed were the ones responsible for the production of language. The vocal cord parasite's vocalization genes were written into the human genome. The parasites were no longer of any use to man now. Man could use his voice as he pleased, when he pleased, hindering the parasite's courtship vocalizations. Having lost their opportunity to reproduce, the parasites died out, leaving behind only the transcribed genes. The vocal cord parasites were once in symbiosis with man. Its genes even became a part of his. Humans and parasites are extremely close. As such, it will be extremely difficult for man's immune system to eliminate the vocal cord parasites. Even cutting them out will be no simple matter, which is exactly why these ethnic cleansing parasites are such a formidable weapon. The rise of the vocal cord parasites goes back approximately 300 million years to the Permian period. At that time, they were not even parasites, but predatory autotrophs. They are believed to have been the common ancestor to the Pentastemida and the Cyclops genus of copepods. However, Earth's environment underwent a violent change at the end of the Permian period. The cause is unclear, but evidence suggests that over 90% of the Earth's organisms at that time died out. The most pronounced threat to the protoparasites was the severe reduction in oxygen concentration. The result was cladogenesis, a splitting that gave birth to a new strain that could parasitize other organisms' respiratory apparatus. This survival tactic helped lower their oxygen consumption, and inhabiting the throat kept them securely in contact with inhaled air. The best survivors were those that parasitized the reptiles that flourished at the time. Entering the Triassic period, the reptiles evolved into dinosaurs, and the protoparasites shared in their success. Dinosaurs developed respiratory organs called air sacs to adapt to the low oxygen environment. These in particular helped the protoparasites thrive. But another trial awaited them. The end of the Triassic period saw another drastic change in the Earth's environment. For most parasites, the male and female take the same host. Many are, in fact, hermaphrodites. Originally, the vocal cord parasites were as well. But for any strain to ride out a severe environmental change, it must secure a steady pool of genetic diversity. Another split. Now the newest strain procreated with mates found in other hosts. And in order to increase its encounters with those mates, the new strain utilized the voice of its host. They came to inhabit the host's vocal cords. This truly was the birth of the vocal cord parasite. The parasites developed the host's pharynx to form resonating chambers and used them to produce sophisticated mating calls. The relatively upright posture of the dinosaurs was important in this, because the crooked L-shaped pharynx was more suited to the development of resonating chambers. These developments ushered in a time of great prosperity for the parasites. But for the third time, the parasites had a major hurdle to overcome. The meteorite impact at the end of the Cretaceous period, which spelled the end of the dinosaurs. With their hosts extinct, the vocal cord parasites had no option but to find a new habitat. Birds. As genetic successors to the dinosaurs, with functioning air sac apparatus already in place, birds were the perfect choice. But the parasites could not survive in birds that flew at high altitudes with thinner air. So they parasitized ground-dwelling birds and altered their respiratory system for the sake of reproduction. They gave the birds the means to produce sophisticated sounds. The syrinx responsible for chirping. This is the proof that points to activation of FOXP2 in songbirds as well as humans. The Cenozoic era began with a rise in oxygen concentration, which helped mammals to evolve and increase in size. The parasites then shifted to humans as a more effective host. Humans' bipedal upright walking meant that our throats could support larger resonating chambers. At first, vocal cord parasites entered humans using birds as their intermediate host. But eventually they changed to conducting their entire life cycle within human hosts. What happened next is as I have already described. People took the vocalizing prowess given them by the parasites and made it language, and once the parasites could no longer use it as their mating call, they died out. Or in other words, the parasites overcame all evolutionary hurdles except humanity. Skullface shared his opinion on this matter. He said the Ethnic Cleansers Project was sure to succeed. After all, the parasites had a grudge against us humans. To think we awoke them after such a long slumber, just so they could sate their thirst for vengeance. It is terrible, unforgivable, and yet it is what I have done. I learned of the vocal cord parasite's existence in literature belonging to the Foundation.
I'm kind of glad that I waited on these tapes. These tapes are probably some of the driest tapes out there. They attempt to make the pseudoscience more believable. Though it's kind of fascinating, all of the pseudoscience that they built for this. All of this lineage of the vocal cord parasites and how it co-developed with humans, and yeah. But it's also dry as hell. And yeah, humans kill everything in the end. Go figure. Pesky humans. Back to the tapes.
It was little more than a theory. The question was, why does only Homo sapiens among all primates have highly developed language? Human versus everything else. The missing link between these was the mystery that gave rise to this theory. I was fascinated by the idea of their existence. In the Diné creation myth, the Nayol Dene, who first inhabited the world, were insect-like creatures. I came to imagine that those insect-like creatures could be humans living in symbiosis with the vocal cord parasites. But I had not the faintest idea of how I could resurrect them. That is when Skullface came to me. What he offered me was not just assistance with my metallic archaea research. He told me the vocal cord parasites really existed. And not only did they exist, they had already been brought back to life in the modern age. An ancient human cadaver, host to the parasites of the time. Cypher excavated such a cadaver from a permafrost region and isolated the DNA coding of the vocal cord parasites. Naturally, they were long dead and could not be brought back, but there was an alternate vessel they could use. A relative species of the Pentastomida discovered in China. It had adapted to live in the nasal cavity of animal hosts, but its genetic sequence showed signs of common ancestry with the vocal cord parasites. Ontogenesis, the path of an organism to maturity, is like a roadmap of the phylogenetic evolution of the entire strain. Cypher used this to effect a reverse evolution of the modern parasite and resurrect the vocal cord parasites. They interposed a developmental mechanism to the ontogenetic stage analogous to when the relative species first appeared, the point at which it split from the vocal cord parasites, forcing its evolution down the other path, the vocal cord parasite path. The larvae this produced by the vocal cord parasites, reborn. I do not know in detail how Cypher accomplished this, but clearly they have access to high-level genetic technologies. Skullface said it was the work of a genius woman scientist, and that the relative species in question was first discovered by a group once called the Philosophers. I was tasked with modifying the resurrected parasites. He charged me with two demands. First, to add lethality to these organisms that had once lived in peace with man, by unleashing the larvae's latent desire to consume nutrients from the host's lung tissue, making them eat and eat until the lungs were destroyed. Second, to have both male and female inhabit the same host and copulate then and there only when exposed to specific pronunciations continuously over an extended time. What he would do to the Dene if I failed. I had no choice. Originally, the ultimate objective of the ethnic cleansing parasite project was the identification of not only languages, but of actual cultures. Language is deeply connected to ethnicity, but many languages are employed by multiple ethnic groups, and confrontation between those ethnic groups is by no means rare. If the cleanser parasites were to be a deterrent against ethnic conflict, they had to distinguish between groups using means other than pure language. The original plan called for this to be achieved by differences in the transmission vector. Each ethnic group has different lifestyle customs and eating habits. For instance, parasites living in shallow water and taken in through the skin could be used to target rice farming groups, or parasites using cows as their intermediate host would be ineffective against cultures that abstain from eating beef. But that is a lofty goal indeed. The current parasites mainly rely on droplet transmission. It would take extensive time to alter the transmission route. I eventually learned that the Ethnic Cleansers Project had been shut down. It was Skullface who put it back into operation. But despite that, he told me to forget about the transmission route and just focus on language identification. I do not know why. I understand that the Chinese philosophers who discovered the relative species of parasite originally planned to develop a phonogrammic Alexia parasite. The left temporal parietal region is home to the part of the brain that identifies the phonetic symbols of the English language. They wished to create a strain that would parasitize that region and suppress its literacy functions. The brain area responsible for identifying the logographs of Chinese, meanwhile, is in the left middle frontal gyrus, meaning that even if native speakers of Chinese were infected with the parasite, their literacy would be unaffected. Old and new, east and west, there is no limit to the delusions of those in power. But this delusion threatens to become a reality. I have to do something to stop this. There must be something I can do. It appears I was looking at things wrong.
What do you mean?
All of you. Until now, I had thought of your organization, Diamond Dogs, as a superorganism.
You'll have to explain that one.
The term refers to a unit of eusocial insects like ants or bees. While made up of many individuals, they behave as though they are one organism, with the queen as their nerve center. The close ties you share here reminded me of that.
Well, the boss's efforts do pull us all together.
I was not finished. I'm speaking in terms of homogeneity. You come from all walks of life, do you not? Many races and tongues, talents and pasts, complementing each other, influencing each other, making Diamond Dogs the unique group that it is.
Of course. We have no use for mindless drones around here.
Is that so? Then perhaps an organization like yours is a truer superorganism than the ants and bees.
Meaning?
Most organisms adapt to their environment by coexisting with other species. Take the cow, for instance. Its rumen, the first stomach, contains an incredible number of bacteria which digest the food it has consumed. Without their help, the cow could not break down the fiber in grasses. The cow has to outsource its means of survival to them.
You don't say.
Man is the same. Some 100 trillion bacteria live inside the human intestines. Without the bacteria, they could not function properly. And it does not stop there. The stomach, the mouth, the skin, even the placenta contains bacteria that coexist with us. The same is true of parasites. In fact, the human immune system has evolved based on parasites being a part of it. Without them, the immune system can run amok and even damage other parts of the body.
This is all very interesting, but what does it have to do with Diamond Dogs?
A harmonious superorganism is made up not of a group of homogeneous individuals, but of diverse individuals that complement each other. That is what I saw in your group here. Then it occurred to me that man is a superorganism. Man's phenotype is not determined solely by his genetics. Some say if you mapped the genomes of all bacteria in the human body, the result would be over 100 times bigger than the human genome. The sum of man's genome and those of the organisms he coexists with, call it a metagenome. creates the superorganism we know as a human being.
Well, now that's quite a leap.
You think so? Then try a broader perspective. If our world were a human body, you would be parasites. You make a living by doing the dirty work that the world powers cannot handle themselves. From their perspective, you are likely a nuisance. But without you, pus would build up around the world, and autotoxemia, self-poisoning, would follow. The world needs your kind.
Thank goodness for that.
Skullface forced me to turn parasites into weapons. Creatures with which we are supposed to coexist. Meanwhile, that foundation I worked with focused solely on the human genome. Apparently thinking that manipulating it would get them whatever new form they want. Both ways are mistakes. Neither is a true superorganism. I am Dine. By speaking with those living inside me, we enhance one another and enjoy harmonious growth. Such was the original purpose of my research. You have made me remember this.
Well, it's an honor. You can travel the world, but you won't find another place like this. If the whole world was like this base, I think the peoples of the world would bid farewell to fighting for good. Maybe that's what the boss wanted in the end.
In thinking about these Code Talker tapes, I wonder if the people he's talking to have a good enough grasp on the scientific concepts that he's talking about. So I think for the vast majority of people listening to this, they'd probably have to look up half the crap and they'd be like, what the hell is he talking about? And I can't imagine that Miller or maybe Ocelot. Ocelot's pretty savvy. But brain dead venom? I don't know. But yeah, that superorganism tape is pretty good. This is likely to be a lot. Oh man. But this is the last set of tapes, I think. I think we went through everything else. We kind of skipped over Paz's diaries, but Paz's diaries were all basically absolutely falsified, and her realizing that her reality is not right. Code Talker definitely likes getting into the weeds. He knows what he's talking about, and he thinks everybody else does. Yeah. Code Talker's like, let me explain this to you in tremendous detail that you likely will not understand. But that's okay. Where's the music coming from? Oh wait, I know where the music's coming from. My music was still on. Let's go through Skullface's objective.
Skullface has finally burned out. The world is rid of his existence at last.
Was he still alive?
You could say that. But you could also say he'd been dead for decades.
What's that supposed to mean?
Biologically speaking, it's hard to say how much was his life.
Side effects from the treatment?
No. The primary effect. Keeping a dying host alive as long as possible. That is the whole point. But in the end, he grew too dependent on his children. As if he had any other way to keep on living. He first underwent parasite therapy before the Soviet Union became his home. His body was horribly burned. Fire washed across his thin young frame and stole his skin and his throat, even his lungs. Only through repeated therapies could the parasites keep him alive. Most of his life became something the parasites gave to him.
And then he lost the ability to die.
That is correct. The parasites live on past the host's death still aiding cell composition.
Huh.
At that stage, there is no way to extract them from the host cells. There is no way of knowing when the last cell of Skullface's body would die. The only choice was to burn the whole thing. And his children, along with it. And I am one to talk. When my life is snuffed out, I expect you to treat my body the same way. And when I burn, I will truly be one with my children for the first time. You say there were 3 English vocal parasites.
According to Skullface, yeah.
Skullface had 2 of the English strain with him. You burned both of them.
There was an oil fire. I tossed him in.
So that just leaves 1. And you tell me Skullface said he used it.
He said it was very close to me.
Very close. One of your comrades, or someone ordered to kill you. Or he could have been speaking metaphorically.
Metaphorically?
Close to your spirit, close to your heart. Someone who either loves you or despises you.
The second one.
That's pretty accurate.
Makes a long list.
Whichever it is, act with caution. Skullface implanted someone with the English language strain. Who it is irrelevant.
Why?
I tell you what Skullface really meant. Very close to you means you will be exposed. All the infected here have been given the Wolbachia. Even if the vocal cord parasites infect them now, they cannot reproduce. But if there's a different host among us, host to the English strain.
If that were the case, we'd see the symptoms.
What about the non-English speakers?
We have plenty of those, but the staff use English as a common language.
But if that someone has not spoken English yet, and begins to speak it now,
there'd be another outbreak.
The final mating pair of the English strain must be found immediately. Skullface is gone, but his threat still remains. On this base, do you see what the final mating pair is? With him dead, those parasites are the stain he wished to leave upon the world. His thirst for vengeance. In their flesh. Think. Does anyone here bear a grudge against you? Who would target you, specifically?
The ethnic cleansers that Code Talker mentioned, they weren't Skullface's true goal. All we have is circumstantial evidence, but here's my theory. It was Cypher who started developing the vocal cord parasites as bioweapons, parasitic weapons, and Africa was the testing ground for them. As Code Talker said, their purpose is the ethnic cleansing of only those who speak a particular language. So they could do a weapon of mass destruction to eradicate specific groups, races, ethnicities, or colonies by the language they speak. Or a kind of absolute language control. Or maybe a tool for those arrogant fools to build some misguided utopia. I could see plenty of uses for them. However, in practical terms, they wouldn't be as dangerous as you'd think. Counteracting the parasites is easy, after all. Cut them out of your throat to save your life, or just don't talk. That also prevents the infection from spreading. So if the international community were to find out about them, they'd no longer be the threat they were conceived to be. In which case, their targets would be limited to minority groups as a deterrent or a terrorist tool. It's hard to imagine Cypher developing something like that as a main weapon for their arsenal. That leads me to think we've only tugged on one little thread in Cypher's grand tapestry. An obscure corner of their work, possibly forgotten altogether. In any case, things changed. When Skullface was forced to relocate to Africa and he saw that thread dangling. All the time he continued that research, he was secretly following his own agenda. The ethnic liberator parasites. His English language strain. Skullface said there were only 3 samples of the English language strain parasite, and I think we can believe him. Bringing his ethnic liberators' plan to fruition depended on creating an English version of the vocal cord parasites at all costs. But an English strain would have been useless to Cypher. Worse, it could have destroyed everything they'd built. It was the one type they couldn't allow. That means Skullface was forced to develop his English strain out of sight of Cypher's network. Naturally, he couldn't use the greenhouse facility Cypher had set up and filled with guinea pigs. Skullface must have found some secret place to create his precious few English parasites, hiding all evidence like a man cheating on his wife. Somewhere, an entirely standalone environment. And when his plan entered its final phase, he must have made the place disappear. Some little room, could be anywhere, but now nowhere at all. We'll never know where he did it. But to elude Cypher's surveillance, it couldn't have been big. I believe Skullface was telling the truth. There were only ever 3 samples of the English language strain. Why activate Sahelanthropus in Afghanistan? This is how Skullface wanted things to play out. The Soviet Union secretly develops a new type of nuclear weapon and successfully deploys it in Afghanistan. Revealing the existence of Sahelanthropus results in a return to the glory days of the Cold War. The threat it poses reignites the nuclear arms race between the world's major powers. The demand for nuclear weapons increases around the globe. What if you then introduced a nuclear weapon anyone could get their hands on? Non-nuclear nations, militant groups of all shapes and sizes, they'd all jump at the chance. Sahelanthropus was a marketing tool to sell nukes all around the world. But I think it's safe to say that plan was stamped out before it got up and running. The world's intelligence agencies never did turn up anything conclusive on it. After all, Sahelanthropus vanished before word could spread. Everything that's happened is already a fading memory, never to join the pages of history. Except for Cypher. Cypher won't forget. They'll already be working on something, quietly, beneath the surface. They'll use the pieces of data scraped together from this incident to build their own bipedal weapon. It'll take them a long time to complete it, but for now, the greed sector have found their new life's work. We'll have to be ready too.
So this appears to be everybody's supposition about Skullface's thoughts. It seems like they're, 80% on with what he said. Skullface basically said that he created all of the vocal cord parasites to drive people to English and then to remove English as the lingua franca, so that the only language that would be left would be the language of revenge and pain and suffering, the phantom pain. Let's see what Skullface got to say about this. I think this is probably him.
Hewitt's dug up some
Nope.
interesting facts about our skull-faced friend. 9 years ago, he was exiled to South Africa, stripped of political power. The upshot
Here
said
it
he
is.
ceased being a serious threat, in Cypher's eyes anyway. They eased up on surveillance, giving him an opening to establish his own military unit, one that answered to his will alone. Those men likely had no idea their orders were coming from Skullface. They probably didn't even know the organization was a part of Cypher at all. Anyway, it was in South Africa where he found renewed interest in parasites. And when he discovered the vocal cord parasites, he began to make his plan. Wipe the English language out of existence. Free the world, not by taking men's lives, but by taking their tongues. In his eyes, the greatest symbiotic parasite the world's ever known isn't microbial. It's linguistic. Words are what keep civilization, our world, alive.
There was something Skullface said. America is made up of many peoples, but those peoples never mix. Quite so. One nation, home to hundreds of different ethnic groups, many of whom stick to their respective living areas, little colonies, not interacting with other groups. going out of their way to avoid one another. Their land, organizations, relationships. Thus, the United States of America is no melting pot. It is more of a salad bowl. It is not made up from one people, but for its minorities to function in society, a common ground is needed. Language. Even if the country is not one. No, because it's not one, a lingua franca is necessary. English. American hegemonism was born from the illusion that English could unite diverse ethnicities. In taking in people from around the globe, America became a microcosm of it. Now the boundaries between it and the rest of the world have become blurred. However different our neighbors may be, English enables us to create symbiotic relationships with each other. If English can bring unacquainted neighbors together in America, this should hold true for the world. This salad bowl that is the world can also become one. A ruler's greatest wealth is not money or land. It is the number of individuals under his control. Subjects who work, consume, are there to be used as pawns in war. For a capitalist ruler, his people's power becomes his power. You are the same. With your diamond dogs, you spin it with your speeches. But what you're doing is bringing as much talent as you can into your little domain. Every person another feather in your cap. Yes, since ancient times, every civilization's ruler has had the same idea. When people unite under one will, they become stronger than the sum of their parts. And the one will is the ruler's will. And what do rulers use to bring people together? Language. In the Old Testament, it is written that only one language was spoken in Eden. A shared tongue that united all of humanity. Mankind eventually grew aware of its power and harnessed that strength to build a tower to the heavens. The mighty Tower of Babel. This angered God, who splintered the language of man, and the tower was never completed. Languages emerged, and the earth was divided as men went their separate ways. Every age is the same. A ruler's first order of business, after conquering new land, is to force his tongue on its people. Ancient Rome, Napoleon, and now Zero. English is wreaking havoc around the world right now. The British Empire tilled the land with war as its hoe, then began planting the seed that is English. Eventually, American capitalism became the new instrument. To play its game of wealth, you only had to abide by one rule.
Speak English.
English. By exploiting people's desires, English has become a leash that people gladly wear around their necks, it would seem.
This is a recording of Skullface and Code Talker.
Ya'at e. You disappoint me. Have you forgotten my face?
Leave me be.
You won't respond to anyone else, so I figured it must be me you wanted to see. But now you won't even look at me.
Have I not suffered enough?
Not until you've eased my suffering first. To tell you the truth, old man, I'm in a bit of a bind. It's about your children. You know what I mean? The parasites. The ones that infect a man's throat, killing him if he speaks their language.
They must not be allowed to multiply.
You are allowed to live only in order to help me. But you don't want to, do you?
Caution, heavy mist.
So why not
anticipated.
choose death instead? Because you want to protect the Diné and their land from me. That's your purpose, isn't it? Don't lose sight of that now. It's in your interest to cooperate. Because if you don't,
Madness.
the parasites can't detect your people's tongue. So I'll just have to resort to more heavy-handed means. I have the greatest respect for your people. I would rather avoid such a thing, but we don't always get our way. I was born a tiny mote in a mighty tempest, and until those winds abate, all I can choose is how to act when they blow me this way or that. Tell me, Code Talker, what happens to a man infected with a pair of your parasites? Can they be removed? Can the full-blown symptoms be prevented?
It is impossible to remove the parasites alone. They have too close an affinity with humans.
Then how do you stop the symptoms from developing? All right. I was hoping for an answer now, but perhaps you just need a little more time. I'll be back soon. I've set up shop, not far from here. We'll be seeing a lot more of each other.
If you're close by, then it is almost complete.
We're in the final phases. All that's left is to see if I can actually disable a nuke, with the help of your metallic archaea. Once that's done, I won't have to return here again. And your suffering will
Weather will
end,
clear shortly.
as will your people's. We're almost finished, Code Talker. Each in our own way.
My only regret will be not finishing you.
There's nothing stopping you. I'm only alive because you want me that way.
Ridiculous.
As you wish. My regret is this misunderstanding between us. You and I, our goal is the same. We should be working together. A symbiosis.
You do not know my mind. I simply want the Diné bloodline to endure.
Really now? You're just another mote in the storm. How you react to all the slings and arrows, that's what counts. That's why you call those squirming monsters your children.
What I have done is forbidden. Forgive me, all of you.
The world should be left the way it is. You of all men should know that. Forgive me, but my schedule has changed. The time for grace and good manners has now run out.
Please. Torture will not work on me. Surely you know this.
Oh, I have no intention of getting rough with you. You haven't been beaten. Your hands aren't even tied. Just like me, you live in symbiosis with countless parasites. What wounds I might inflict, they'll patch right up. You might feel considerable pain, but I've no doubt you can withstand it.
Then what do you plan on doing?
I have a soldier standing outside. Nothing special about him, except that he always obeys. I have given him one instruction. Whenever I ring this bell, he passes on a message for me. That message is simply, go.
What is this?
After that, though, it gets complicated. The message will arrive at a room. A little bigger than this one, nothing special. Some of your people are in this room, surrounded by my men.
Enough of this.
They pick them at random. No regard for age, gender. In that, I suppose, they're different from you. Not as discriminating. They tied them up, one by one, blindfolded them. We had to maintain order, you understand?
You bastard.
Go. When they hear that, my men will pick one of your people and infect them with a parasite. Your parasite.
It won't work on my people.
True. The vocal cord parasite doesn't respond to your language. But what about English?
An English strain. It exists.
A ring of this bell, and they infect one person. If that person abandons the Navajo language, the English strain will trigger symptoms.
You monster.
So, it's quite simple. Every time I ring the bell, another of your people is infected.
Don't do this.
I don't want to do this. I'd rather not have to ring the bell, which is why I'm hoping you will talk to me.
What do you want? What else could you possibly want?
You know the answer to that. How to prevent the symptoms caused by the parasite.
You cannot control it like some slave. Forget the idea.
Forget it. Unlikely.
I will never tell you.
Oh,
What have you done,
You made me do that.
you black-hearted?
Settle down.
Don't use it again.
Well, that is up to you. All you need to do is tell me what I want. How to prevent the vocal cord parasite's symptoms.
Why? Why do you need to know?
The adult soldiers at Bwala are all dead.
What?
The parasite traveled downstream. It would appear that he was involved. Another demon who woke up from 9 years of slumber. As a result, the vocal cord parasite spread through the village.
I told you this would happen.
It was an unfortunate accident. He is becoming an annoyance. He may stumble upon the truth sooner or later, but I suppose that is really of no consequence. One day, he too will pay for what he has done.
Black Anna. The real demon is you.
You know, this incident made me realize something. You are right. I should have acted with more humility. These creatures cannot be controlled. All the more reason I require a means to stop them.
There is no such way.
Oh, really?
Wait! Don't ring it again.
It is up to you. Out with it!
I see now. There must be more to it than that.
What?
They are in you. You use this land to breed more of my children. And not just here. No. In pursuit of your ethnic cleansers. You sifted through many language strains. Finding hosts. Breeding more and more. You would have been infected in the process. Infected with countless strains. Most likely your mother tongues as well. Romania, Northern Transylvania. You found that one too. Yes, the Hungarian strain. That responds to the CK's dialect.
Silence!
Black Anna. It is you who shall pay.
Is
this your retaliation, old man?
Let my people go and never
This is a
bother them
cutscene that I
again.
want to see.
You heard me. What now? What? No! What are you doing?
I am not afraid. I probably have every language strain inside of me,
Wow.
meaning all the world's languages are already lost to me. But that suits me fine. If need be, I myself can produce whatever strain is needed.
And that means nothing to you. If you are infected, you can never again speak your mother tongue. Otherwise, you will die, as will every one of your countrymen.
A few words here and there won't trigger the symptoms. And besides, the time is not yet right to show this face in my homeland. Not until my revenge is complete. Now,
Stop!
Oh,
we're
man.
out of time. I have to get going. Well,
No! Radiation. It's radiation.
Radiation, of course.
Wait.
So it can be used.
But how much? I do not know.
Radiation denatures their reproductive cells, preventing them from mating.
Same principle as the
He lied to him.
sterilization technique. The reproductive cells are more sensitive to radiation than the rest of the body. But I have not tested it. There is no telling what mutation could result, or how the host may be affected. Not to mention what could happen if this is done post-infection.
I don't care. This plan goes into action now.
Wow.
As
I
long
don't
as it
think
works,
I ever heard this
the
one.
details can wait. You wouldn't be lying to me, of course, old man.
I can guarantee nothing.
I owe you my life. My body has been burned on countless occasions, but it survives, thanks to your children. That is why I trust you.
Then do not repeat my mistake.
What's that?
In the West, it is said that the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. In the East, it is said the man of flesh brings spiritual power to words. The people knew back then that these creatures carry the gospel. They do not belong in our hands. They must not be touched.
How enlightening. I'll remember that.
Huh.
Consider this my thanks.
What are you?
catch.
No!
Sun will rise momentarily.
Well then, I'm afraid it really is goodbye this time, Code Talker.
There is no soldier.
Now where did he run off to? Guess he wasn't as obedient as I thought.
There never was any soldier.
So long.
Oh, wow.
How dare you!
Now, where did he run off to? Holy crap. So there's a couple of things that comes out of that if you can put two and two together. Code Talker was forced under duress to give Skullface a way to stop the parasite. He says radiation. He also says radiation it's going to be unpredictable. Skullface says, I don't care. How did Huey get the idea to try radiation? That means that Huey either was told the same thing by Code Talker, which I doubt he was, or he was connected to Skullface all along. Because assumedly this moment happened shortly before you met Code Talker. Because it was after the adults were wiped out at Wala Yamasa. It was right before the Code Talker mission. Alright.
Skullface.
Last set.
Real name unknown. Born in Hungary, more specifically northern Transylvania, after it reverted to Hungary from Romania. While he was young, the country allied with Germany as part of the Axis powers, but later during the war, it came under Soviet occupation. The Hungarians struggled for independence, but the Soviets came down. Hard. Just like he said, time and again the country was ruled by a foreign tongue. When he was a young boy, he lost his native language, the bedrock for any developing child. His country, his family, his face, his identity, everything was stolen from him. All he had left was his skull. Skullface first tried his hand at espionage during all the chaos from the war. Agents, military officials, and soldiers who operated out of Hungary during the war vanished over the course of several months. This Soviet spy hunt rocked the counter-intel world. Mysterious fatal illnesses, accidental deaths, drownings, people having strokes behind closed doors. Just like Stalin, no one knew who was behind it. But all you need to do was look for who had the motive. They were all taken out by a man without a face. And now we've got an idea of how he did it too. He'd gotten revenge for his people, but he wasn't finished. Skullface defected to the West, eventually ended up with the SAS. That's where he met Zero. It's possible he began planning this whole thing back then. It's hard to say. In any case, Zero made him his XO. He always did have a thing for oddballs. But this one was set to lead a unit no one else would know about. When Zero created Fox, he also formed XOF as a support team. An unconventional special forces unit designed to support Fox, make it stronger, with Skullface giving the orders. Zero never even told the boss about it, nor the CIA, naturally. If Fox was Zero's silver bullet, XOF was the recoil when he pulled the trigger. Just like Newton's third law. While you were with Fox, Skullface was operating behind the scenes. Sometimes as your backup, sometimes as a mole or a scout, sometimes as your cleanup crew. Fox's tale, making sure the mission succeeded and that you survived. We only have his word to go on, but Skullface's goal was revenge against those who'd use language to subjugate people. Those corrupting a people's identity by forcing a new tongue on them. Those using the power of language to control information. Naturally,
Cypher.
that set his sights on Zero. To Zero, English was simply the most convenient code. But to Skullface, English was a parasite. And by eradicating it, he'd stop the world from being eaten away. If that didn't work, he was ready to see the world scorched by nuclear fire. To save language, culture, and race from annihilation, he was willing to overstep the hands of the doomsday clock. That is, of course, if you believe anything he had to say.
I think there's one more. Where was it? Might have been in Questioning Huey. Yeah, I didn't play this.
The R&D team's going to take over Emmerich's work. He may be
Played it
gone,
for
but
myself.
it won't affect us one bit. We'll be able to deliver whatever you need just like before. You can depend on that. One other thing. I'm tracking his whereabouts. Nothing to report at the moment, though.
Let it go. He's gone. The guy's gone.
I know. I just want to be sure. Not like I'm losing sleep over this son of a bitch.
The AI pod's final recording. It's playing. It's just not very loud, or nothing's being said. You verify that it's playing. No, it isn't. Why? Oh, there we go.
Thing! Huey! Damn it, Huey! Open it now! Please! Let me out!
Kill me.
Kill me!
Clouds approaching.
If only I'd tried to get out sooner. Perhaps I'd have made it. Why didn't I stop the hatch from closing? Even if it meant losing an arm. I guess I'll stay a while. My voice, it's so distant. But you can hear me, can't you, Joy? I know you can. You're recording all of this. Deep down in some memory board he'll never find. Duplicating it. Burying it under heaps of meaningless code. Anyway, I guess I can say what needs to be said. I can still do that much. Talk to you. Even if I can't face you. Even if there's a heaven. Even if you're waiting there. I don't deserve to see you again. I don't deserve to love you. I signed up for Zero's plan. Even now that he's halfway to dead, his plan lives on, leeching away at the wall. And it took your strength to make it happen. I'm using you. I put the world in his palm. Once and for all. Zero, or whoever it is who's taken his name. They found me after the Caribbean. They made me simulate his will. so that even after the body was gone, that will would keep the world turning the way they wanted. I had no choice. They dredged Largo Kosibolka, pulled up your phantom.
So that is the
forced
original
me to revive
AI pod.
and modify you. I thought I could bring you back, but in the end, I sold your will to him. Now this pod is just one big shell. A husk. Your phantom's no longer here. As for me, everything I touch turns to ashes. I could never make anyone happy. And now I'll never see my son again. But at least Hal's free from his father's hands. Me, with child. Can you imagine? I wonder how you took the news. Were you jealous? I knew what I was doing. If I could pass your will onto a child I carried, my genes, your meme, a father would be irrelevant. If I did that, that child would be ours. I've been a fool. Pride, conceit, baseless theories.
Caution.
Of course, I couldn't see through the dream. The false you I created. I only wanted to pass your will on to the next generation. But Zero took it away. And now I haven't just lost you. I've lost my... Oh, Hal, can you forgive the mother who couldn't protect you? The one who let them take it all away from us. Oh. There's still hope. You... the one he took away. He'll never break your will. The will to make this world the way you saw it could be. I buried code, just to be sure. Inside of you, there is an egg. And when someone finds it, when they crack it,
Oh.
there'll be nothing left to stop you.
I didn't pick this up the first time I heard this.
The world you envisioned will become a reality. Joy, I know you can hear me. You do remember my voice?
you. Please. Take care of our son. Hal. Don't ever be afraid. Whatever happens there, she'll be watching over you. The system, the framework for your world will protect you. You don't need me. You just need to be strong enough for the both of us. It's you. You. At the end. I think I hear your pulse.
So, what I missed the first time I heard that was well, there's two things. The one thing that I noticed the first time but didn't really notice as well as this time. In the end, Otacon, Hal, winds up being exactly what she hopes. The person who carries forth the boss's will. Stops the system. Matter of fact, he and Sonny are directly responsible for it, and this is where that second part. She hid something in the code of the AIs. Apparently the boss AI was recontextualized or reconfigured to more accurately reflect Zero's ideals rather than the boss. And she hid a piece, an egg, as she called it, in that code. From what I remember from Metal Gear Solid 4, they had this piece of code that they found inside of the AIs that became, well, that Sonny rewrote, and it became the Fox Alive virus, which ended everything. It solved the whole Patriots conundrum. Well, that's all the tapes. I'm glad that there was no way I was going to be able to play those while playing through the game. Matter of fact, when I originally had played the game, not that I got all the tapes, I didn't make it all this far, I would just sit and listen to the tapes. Even though you can do it while on the mission, it's really distracting. But it's also not compelling to just lay here and listen to tapes for some of them. I love that tape. Can't make this stuff up. Thanks, Kojima. How about them zombies, eh? Well, that's going to be the end of Metal Gear Solid V. And until, well, we'll probably do Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2. But until we get some new games, it's going to be the end of Metal Gear for a while. And that's it for now.
Clouds
approaching.